UFC heads to the Apex this Saturday for UFC Vegas 102 Cannonier versus Rodrigues. Ladies and gentlemen, the Apex. I know when we talk about the Apex, everybody kind of gets all uptight. They're ready to fuck somebody up over complimenting the Apex. But listen, man, this low-key might be the best Apex card the UFC's ever put together. I mean, from top to bottom, we have some outstanding matchups all over this card. Great matchmaking by the UFC. Very, very competitive fights all throughout the card. And not only that, I mean, how are they going to deck out the Apex card and then they're going to shit all over Australia with UFC 312, man? Like, this card, in terms of the level of matchups and how close they are, we are in for an incredible night of fights, man. We have some very close matchups. I think we are going to see a ton of finishes on this card. And not only that, some of these matchups are so competitive, but yet have so much on the line for some of the prospects that are hot and ready and, really, really delivering so far in the UFC. They're getting tested with someone else that's doing something similar to them. And this is where we see stars get made. This is where we start to see that next big name in the division start to come about, is coming out of the Apex a lot of the time, right? They're giving a lot of these guys these Apex cards to go out there, get the reps in, go out there and try to put some highlights together. I believe that this is one of those cards. We have great matchups. Super excited to break this one down. So this is going to be my full card breakdown with a prediction for every single fight on the card. Let's hop into it, starting with the very first fight of the evening between Gabriel Bonfim and Khaos Williams. You could argue that this is better than any fight that happened at UFC 312, man. This fight is absolutely, when I saw this one, I'm like, this is a crazy fight. This is absolute chaos, hence the name here for Khaos Williams. Because when I look at this, when I look at this matchup, not only are both guys incredibly good and really on the rise in the welterweight division, but both of them are incredibly dangerous, right? When I watch Khaos Williams, a couple things stand out, right? He does tend to be a little bit wild and a little bit reckless, but he's got some serious power in his hands. And the other thing with Khaos, he is willing to go out there and lay it all on the line. He has no problem putting himself in harm's way to go out there and try to find the KO. So any fighter that does that is going to be very, very exciting to watch. And then with Gabriel Bonfim, he has displayed an incredibly high-level skill set, right? His striking is very, very clean. It's crisp. It's very good. It's explosive. And then he has very, very dangerous submissions in his back pocket, which I think is going to be the difference in this matchup. Because when I look at Khaos, this is a guy that's streaking, right? He goes out there 8 months ago, KOs Carlston Harris, has the close call here on the split decision with Rolando Bedoya. Then he goes out there and loses to Randy Brown by split decision. But I've said this all the time, Randy Brown, he's a hard matchup at 170, man, because when Randy is on, he can give anyone an issue, right? He's really tall for the weight class. He's fast on the feet. And if you don't have the grappling to threaten Randy, you could be in trouble, right? So, kind of a tough fight there for Khaos Williams. But again, a split decision, goes out there, gets, the nasty KO over Miguel, and then was able to get the decision win almost 4 years ago against Matt Semmelsberger. Khaos Williams is dangerous. He has big power in his hands. I expect him to come forward. I expect, for him to be kind of swinging those big old haymakers. But to me, that is what's going to get him in trouble in this matchup. Because when I watch Gabriel Bonfim, this guy, to me, is the more clean, technical fighter. And I was critical on the pay-per-view card, UFC 312, to where we saw Rong Zhu versus Cody Steele. Look, it was a very, very fun fight. But what it came down to was, yes, Cody Steele is still green on the feet. He's got big power, but he throws these big winging hooks to where Rong Zhu is just throwing those straight shots down the middle. I think that is almost what this matchup kind of looks like to a degree, right? And then Khaos is going to be out there, guns blazing, throwing big shots, to where Gabriel Bonfim, what we've seen from him, the technique and the precision with the striking is really starting to improve. And we saw that, getting a win over Ange Losa, goes out there and did get finished by Nicholas Dalby, right? And I know Nicholas Dalby is a good fighter, so that one, kind of add there. But before that, goes out there, gets the submission over Trevin Giles, goes out there, gets another submission, and then on the Contender Series against Trey Waters, finds the Von Flue choke. And that to me was really when I really took notice to Gabriel here. Obviously, him and his brother, but with Gabriel, it's the submissions, man, and the way that he is able to hold his own on the feet. I mean, Trey Waters, that's a tricky matchup. That's a tall, rangy guy, and Gabriel didn't care. Went right after him, got right in his face, throws that sweeping left hook. That is one of his shots that he really tries to look for. I believe that Chaos Williams will come forward. He will be aggressive. He will land some big shots. But if he does not get Gabriel out of there, which I don't think he will, I think that the technique of Gabriel, the way that he picks his shots is a little bit more technical. He's able to wobble Chaos with a shot and then ultimately mix in the grappling and find a submission. So I am going to go Gabriel Bonfim in this matchup, but I'm going to say he gets a submission. I'm going to say in the second round. I think we see a very close first round, and then in the second, we see Gabriel come out, make some of those adjustments, because what this comes down to for me, Chaos is a fun fighter. He's out there stacking up wins, so I'm not going to call him like this, guy that just shows up and, every fight is going to be crazy, but he is a high-level fighter. I just think Gabriel is a few steps ahead in terms of that department. I believe Gabriel is going to get this thing done by submission. I think this is a crazy fight to start the night off, though, without question. Moving on, we have Angela Hill versus Ketlen Souza. Interesting fight here because with Angela Hill, we all know Angela Hill by now. She's 40 years of age. It seems like she's been in the UFC since I was in diapers. She's been around for so long, and she has had, yes, she's got 17 wins, 14 losses, but she has a wealth of experience, and you can never count out Angela because the one thing about Hill, got a really good gas tank, very, very good activity, and she mixes things up on the feet incredibly well, right? And we've seen in her career, she has a knack for testing these up-and-comers, right? We saw that against Tabitha Ricci. Very close fight here to where people thought that Hill got this done. Went out there and beat Luana, went out there and beat Denise Gomes, and then goes out there, loses to Mackenzie Dern, but then got the win over Emily Ducote. But what we've seen from Angela Hill is these fights that she's lost, they're still very close. Like Angela Hill, even though being, 40 years of age, she's the favorite coming in, which is kind of, which is crazy considering she's 40. She's good. She's well-rounded. She's good. She has a lot of experience. And then on the other side, we have Ketlen Souza. And Ketlen Souza really came onto my radar specifically at the Sphere. Goes out there, gets a nasty submission. And what we've seen from Ketlen is pressure and power. And to me, that is a scary combination for Angela Hill, because if you don't go after Angela, she'll just kind of play the pick and poke game, work her way to a decision, weaponize the cardio, and kind of, try to drown you, so to speak. But I don't know that she's going to be able to do that in this fight, because what we've seen from Ketlen Souza is a very dangerous fighter. She's got big power in her hands. We saw that against Mann, even though she got the decision there. She is susceptible to a submission. We saw that against Corinne Silva. But before that, getting to the UFC, this woman displays incredible power. She's very aggressive. She stalks her opponents, moves forward. I believe Ketlen Souza, the pressure and the power that she is going to be throwing in the direction of Angela Hill is going to freeze Angela at a lot of moments in this fight. Now, I do believe that Angela can go out there and outland Ketlen Souza and put the volume on the board. But at the end of the day, man, I think the power of Ketlen Souza is going to make Angela cautious to where we don't see Angela open up as much, at least early on. Maybe as the fight plays out, we start to see her open up a little bit more. But I think she's going to have to be very careful, and the threat of the grappling as well. I know Ketlen Souza is not exactly a phenom when it comes to the grappling, but she does have good enough grappling to mix it up on Angela, threaten with submissions, and the power and the pressure that she provides, that is kind of the kryptonite that we have seen to Angela Hill. But don't count out Angela in this fight. I'm surprised that she's the favorite, but also not surprised at the same time because of how good she is. Even though she's losing fights, they're still very close. She has the experience on her side. She has volume. She has all those different things. I could absolutely see Angela winning this fight by decision, but I think the bigger shots, the threats with the grappling from Souza are going to be enough. I think that she is able to get the biggest win of her career against Angela Hill. Moving on, we have Rafael Estevam versus Jesus Aguilar. This is this is one of those fights, man, just like the both fights that we've already talked about on this card. Just really good matchmaking here by the UFC, because with Rafael Estevam, this dude is really, really well-rounded. I like watching him fight. I think that the way he transitions in terms of the grappling, the submission threat that he provides is incredibly dangerous for a lot of fighters in the division. And being a flyweight, he's a few wins away here. He's undefeated. He's got a big opportunity here with Jesus Aguilar. He's a few wins away from putting himself in a top 10 conversation and getting himself into those ranked opponents, because this guy's dangerous, man. You saw he went out there against Charles Johnson, got a unanimous decision. And when I saw that, I'm like, listen, Charles Johnson, I think he might be the most underrated flyweight on the roster. He's got very good striking. He's a tricky opponent. So to go out there and do what he did to Charles Johnson, I was incredibly impressed. And then before that, on the Contender Series, goes out there and gets the finish. And this is really where I was like, look, Rafael Estevam, I watched his film coming into the Contender Series. This guy's dangerous, man. He's got good ground and pound. His stand-up is clean. And overall, the grappling and the way he mixes things together, this guy's absolutely a problem in the flyweight division. And I think that he is going to be too much for Jesus in this fight. Now, having said all of that, I believe that Rafael is the better fighter. Jesus Aguilar just has this knack for when you count him out and you don't think he's going to win, he goes in there and kind of shuts down all that talk. Because we saw in his most recent outing, he goes out there against Stuart Nickel. Stuart was a good grappler coming into that fight, making his UFC debut, and I'm like, look, Stuart Nickel, he should be able to have success with the grappling, got caught in a nasty guillotine, which is absolutely Aguilar's best weapon. He has a very tight and nasty guillotine, and he just knows how to lock it in. He times it perfectly when these guys enter with the takedowns, so that's something Rafael is going to have to be very aware of coming into this fight, which I'm sure he is. Goes out there, gets a split decision win, goes out there, gets the violent KO over Shannon Ross. Again, I've given my thoughts on Shannon Ross before. Seems like a nice guy, not UFC caliber in my opinion. And he did have the submission loss to Tatsuro Taira. That matchup to me is what this matchup is probably going to look like in my opinion. I think Rafael Estevam has the ability to mix it up on the feet, has the ability to implement the grappling. And overall, I think that his skill set is just better than Jesus Aguilar. I'm going Rafael Estevam by submission. I think that he is able to find a submission. I'm going to say in the third round. I think, again, because Jesus Aguilar is very, very tough, and outside of that loss to Tatsuro Taira, he's been really good, and he does have good power in his hands. He kind of loops on his shots a little bit to where the clean Rafael, I think, can tag him with some shots down the middle. I like Estevam to get this done. I think he stays undefeated. I think he finds a submission in this matchup. But again, every time Jesus is counted out, he seems to find a guillotine or a big KO. So can't rule him out. Again, good matchmaking by the UFC here. Moving on, we have Walter Walker versus Don'Tale Mayes. This is one of those fights in the heavyweight division that, it really is cut and dry. Listen, Walter Walker, brother of Johnny Walker, right? Johnny Walker, very kind of unpredictable, kind of a wild man at one point, was, possibly a highly touted prospect in the light heavyweight division. We just saw him fall off and never be the same guy. And to me, that concerns me, where I know Walter is different than his brother. They have very different styles. But what we've seen from Walter Walker, right? He comes in, he's getting a lot of finishes, his ground and pound, the way that he is able to mix in the grappling, because his wrestling is really damn good. He's very strong, and when he is able to take guys down, they struggle to work back to the feet, right? And we saw in his UFC debut, he went out there against Lucas Bresky and loses by decision, and I'm like, what a disappointment, right? Because from what we had seen in terms of the grappling for Walter Walker, I'm like, that is absolutely a matchup he should be winning. Goes out there, loses to Lucas Bresky, and I'm like, I don't know if I could trust this guy again. Then he goes out there against Junior Tafa and does get a submission. But listen, Junior Tafa has zero grappling. Brother, he's grappling zero. He has zero grappling. He's basically just a striker, right? Junior Tafa does have good striking, but his grappling's atrocious. And we've seen the Tafa brothers, they don't do well against guys who grapple. So that win, I take with a grain of salt. However, I think this is kind of a similar matchup, because with Don'Tale Mayes, he's a good striker, right? We know he's trained with John Jones over at Jackson Wink back in the day and throughout the years and all those kinds of things. He's a good striker. He's got decent timing and the way he mixes things together. We saw him go out there and lose to Shamil Gaziev. And listen, Shamil, that's the GOAT, man. Shamil he's a good opponent. He's got fast hands. He can mix into grappling. No harm, no foul. But that's kind of a similar type of threat that Walter provides in this fight. Goes out there and gets the win over Machado. And that's kind of what we've just seen from Don'Tale Mayes. Hot and cold, hot and cold, hot and cold. More or less a journeyman in the heavyweight division. That is why I'm going to go Walter Walker. But I'm going to say by KO. TKO, ground and pound. I think that he is able to take down Don'Tale Mayes, control him in the first round. Maybe early on, Mayes lands some good shots on the feet, keeps his distance, and utilizes the boxing. But as we get into the second round, Walter secures a takedown, holds him down. Mayes doesn't do the best job at getting back to his feet. I think Walker can threaten with submissions, but ultimately the ground and pound will be too much. I'm going Walter Walker by finish on the ground. But again, who knows, man? Because Walter Walker, what we saw against Bresky, it just seems like if he can't get the takedowns, Don'Tale Mayes can absolutely tune him up on the feet and find a finish or work his way to a decision. But I think the grappling of Walker is a lot more dominant than the takedown defense that Mayes provides. That's why I think Walker gets this one done. But again, I don't really trust Walter Walker that much, but I still think he gets it done. Moving on, we have Vince Morales versus Elijah Smith. I really like this fight. I really like this fight because Elijah Smith, he's one of those guys I've had my eye on, right? He's 22 years of age. He comes in off the Contender Series, goes out there and gets the win over Aaron Tao. And I was like, look, what we've seen from Elijah on the local pro scene. This guy has a beautiful blast double. He's very, very good with the wrestling. He's got big power in his hands. And we have seen the improvements in terms of his confidence with the striking. Now, having said all that, this is one of those fights where I'm always nervous, man. I'm always nervous for the new kid on the block because you're facing a guy in Vince Morales who is not a world beater, right? Vince Morales was in the UFC. He, found his way out of the UFC. Now he is back, and he's coming off of a loss to Taylor Lapilus by decision, and that's not a bad loss because I think Taylor Lapilus is a damn good fighter. So I don't really fault him for that. But then again, he was on like a 4 or 5 fight win streak to work his way back into the UFC. And not only that, these were impressive performances, going out there and getting a bunch of finishes by submission, by TKO. So Vince Morales is a guy that has kind of maybe found a little bit more in his skill set. He's a little bit more confident coming back to the UFC. However, the regional scene, and I know one of those fights was in Ryzen, I believe, right? I mean, so again, the level of competition in the UFC is different. Even fighters coming off of the Contender Series, I believe, is different. I'm going to pick Elijah Smith to win this fight. And I think if he's going to get it done, it's going to have to be by finish. And I believe that would happen in the second round. But keep in mind, this is Elijah Smith's debut, right? And we see this all the time. This is why I caution, because listen, he has all the skills. He's 22 years of age. He's got very good wrestling. He's strong. He's athletic. He's got some serious power in his hands. But Vince is the veteran. He's experienced. He's 34 years of age. He's hungry. He's back in the UFC. Came off a loss to a good fighter in Taylor Lapilus. And Vince has good submissions. So if Elijah does try to play the grappling game, I could see Vince potentially catching him in something. So I think Elijah's going to have to be careful there. And in terms of the striking, Vince Morales, he's not bad on the feet, right? He does have some pretty good technique that he could utilize on the feet to, I think, be a little bit more precise than Elijah Smith. So again, I'm believing in this young man, in Elijah Smith, but I'm always nervous whenever they make their UFC debut, especially against an experienced guy like Vince Morales who has finishing ability. This is a tough debut fight for Elijah Smith. I mean, he's liable to go out there and finish Vince very easily, but I don't think it happens. I think we see a good competitive first round, and then we have to see Elijah get tested and dig a little bit. I think he finds a big shot on the feet after utilizing some of the wrestling. I got Elijah Smith by finish. Whether that's on the ground, hurts him standing, I think Elijah Smith finds a finish in this matchup. Moving on. We have Julia Avila versus Jacqueline Cavalcanti. Now, this is an interesting fight because I think Jacqueline Cavalcanti, she's a good striker. She's long, she's rangy for the division, and she just has a very pretty style in terms of she sits on the outside, she floats around, throws good front kicks up the middle, good long straight combinations, and I really enjoy watching her fight. I think she's very technically clean, and since she's been in the UFC, I don't think I've picked against her, right? And she's been on an absolute tear, going out there beating Nora in her last matchup, going in there against Nunes, then going out there against Zaraya Fearn. And so what we've seen from Jacqueline Cavalcanti is she's very skilled, she's very technical, but she doesn't exactly have the greatest pop, right? And sometimes that concerns me when you start to climb the ladder in your career. Now, I don't believe that Julia Avila provides the necessary test where it's going to come down to we need to see Jacqueline start to put her foot on the gas and stop coasting so much. I don't believe that Julia possesses the skill set because last time out for Julia was over a year ago against an older version of Miesha Tate. And I love Miesha Tate, but we got to be honest, that's not the same Miesha Tate. And she went out there and got absolutely dominated by Miesha Tate. She got submitted, so not particularly a good look. I know Miesha Tate's a legend, but she's also, much older in her career. She's incredibly inactive. Not a good loss there. Goes out there and gets a submission. Then she loses one, goes out there and is able to find finishes. So the difference in this fight is Julia seems to have a little bit more finishing potential. So that does scare me. However, I'm going to go Jacqueline Cavalcanti by decision because a lot of her fights since she's been in the UFC, she just picks people apart. She fights at a very comfortable pace. She sticks and moves on the outside. She doesn't allow you to just get in there and brawl because we saw that in the Nunes fight. Nunes has big power. She's aggressive. She stalked her, moved forward, was letting some of those big shots fly. But it's the clean technical shots that Cavalcanti lands that I think is going to be the difference. I think that she outlands Julia, picks her apart, defends the takedowns if it comes to that, or if she gets taken down, finds her way back to the feet. I got Jacqueline Cavalcanti. She hasn't let me down yet, so I'm going to stay on the Cavalcanti train. I think she gets this one done by decision. Moving on, we have Rodolfo Vieira versus Andre Petroski. Now, this is an interesting matchup. This is good matchmaking here by the UFC because both guys are coming off of 2 wins in a row, right? They had a loss, 2 wins in a row here. And this is one of those fights where we see 2 grappling-based guys that it almost makes you wonder, is this just going to play out on the feet, right? Where we don't see the grapplers try to go at each other, right? That's what we see, right? We see 2 grapplers, they go in there and they end up just basically having a kickboxing fight. However, I don't know that that's what we see in this fight because I think when you look at Rodolfo Vieira, this is a very, very high-level grappler, man. You don't see many Rodolfo Vieiras coming into MMA, like this dude has sensational submissions, very, very good grappling overall, and that's what we had seen. Goes out there against a very good striker in Armen Petrosian and finds a submission, right? Then goes out there against Cody Brundage, gets a submission again, that's Cody Brundage, right? And then he goes out there, loses to Chris Curtis, is able to beat Dustin Stoltzfus by a submission, and then he goes out there and gets submitted by Anthony Hernandez. Not a bad loss there. I think Fluffy is one of the dark horses in the middleweight division. He's a very hard matchup. So not bad there, right? And I think Rodolfo Vieira, he absolutely possesses more of the finishing threat in this matchup because Andre Petroski, coming off the Ultimate Fighter, he had some hype there, and he just seemed to not really be able to find his footing, right? Goes out there, beats Gerald Meerschaert by split decision, gets finished by Michel Pereira. That's a damn good fighter, though. Goes out there and gets finished by Jacob Malkoun. Not a particularly good look, but then he goes out there, beats Josh Friend by decision, and then gets the decision over Dylan Budka. I just don't like what I've seen from Andre Petroski, if I'm being blunt. I don't like what I've seen. I think he has solid wrestling. He's got a good camp. He's over at Renzo Gracie Philly. He does have good submissions. He does have good submission defense, but his striking on the feet is not very good. He throws big looping shots to where I think Rodolfo Vieira, he's more clean on the feet, and he throws better straight shots. He's cleaner. He does have some good power in his hands. We've seen that from Rodolfo Vieira, but I think that the submission threat of Rodolfo Vieira is going to be a problem in this matchup because I think he dictates where the fight goes. If Petroski tries to level change, I could see Vieira trying to lock in a submission, right? And then if it plays out on the feet, I think Vieira has better volume, he's more technical, and I think that he can land that straight shot before Petroski lands those big, looping, wild, winging, what I call ooga booga shots, right? So I do believe that Vieira gets this done. I'm going to say by submission. I'm going to say it happens in the second round. I think he goes out there, it plays out on the feet. Maybe Petroski tries to mix in the grappling after getting hurt, and then we see Vieira counter the position and find a submission. I think Rodolfo Vieira is able to get this one done, but this is a big matchup for both of these guys, winning 2 in a row, both of them at interesting points in their career, much needed win coming from both guys here. I think Vieira is able to get the finish. Moving on, we have Edmund Shahbazyan versus Dylan Budka. This is such a weird fight. This is such a weird fight because if this fight was only 5 minutes long, Edmund Shahbazyan by clear-cut domination. He would absolutely murk Dylan Budka, and probably a round he would beat the living hell out of him. The problem is, Edmund Shahbazyan has shown that you can't trust his gas tank. That's just the reality. You can't trust his gas tank. You really can't trust him when it comes to showing up. Because at one point, he's 27 years of age. We were looking at Edmund Shahbazyan as look, maybe this he's going to be a problem in the middleweight division. And then ever since, just the stretch that he's had, he loses to Nasruddin Imavov, gets finished. And I mean, Nasruddin Imavov, number one guy in the middleweight division right now, just KO'd Israel Adesanya. Don't really fault him for that. Goes out there, he gets a finish, then goes out there, gets finished brutally on the ground by Fluffy Hernandez. Again, look who he's losing to. One of those Imavov. I mean, one of the best in the world, loses to Anthony Hernandez, one of the best in the world, in my opinion. Goes out there and gets the finish over AJ Dobson. That was a good performance. But then he gets submitted by Gerald Meerschaert. And this was almost exactly what I would predict if Edmund was going to lose that fight is what happened. He beats up on somebody and then he just gasses out. And then guys utilize the grappling and take advantage of that. I believe Edmund Shahbazyan wins this fight because while I think that he has grappling issues and cardio issues, I just don't think Dylan Budka is very good. I mean, the Mindless Hawk, that's the dumbest nickname I've ever heard of, right? I mean, this guy, he's trained at a Demolition Fight Team. They got some good guys over there up in Ohio. Listen, Dylan Budka, 25 years of age. He's got good wrestling, but what we've seen in his past two fights, he loses to Andre Petroski. That's another pretty good grappler, so he loses that one. Then goes out there against Cesar Almeida, and he just could not control Cesar Almeida. Almeida was able to work back to his feet, was able to land some nasty shots and get him out of there. And to me, this is, if you're asking me who has better takedown defense out of Shahbazyan and Almeida, I mean, I would hope Shahbazyan has better takedown defense. So I don't know that Budka could just ragdoll him around and have his way. And then he goes out there and wins on decision against Chad on the Contender Series. So if Dylan Budka wins this fight, maybe he's able to, after the first round, weather a storm, take down Edmund, control him, for the duration of the fight. I just don't know that happens. I don't think that he makes it through. We saw that, and I know Cesar Almeida is a very high-level striker, but I believe that Edmund Shahbazyan is able to find a finish in the first round. I think he comes out patient but aggressive, gets in the face of Dylan Budka, and just puts it on him. Doesn't even allow it to get into those second and third rounds to where we know Shahbazyan is very vulnerable. He's got a point to prove coming off of that embarrassing loss, in my opinion, to Gerald Meerschaert. I think he finds a finish and gets it done in the first round. But if he doesn't, I could see Budka taking him down and making it a very boring fight because Budka throws no ground and pound. He's very, very boring, takes people down, holds them, just controls them. So he will win the fight if it makes it past the first round, most likely, because that means Shahbazyan probably gassed himself out. But I'm going to trust Shahbazyan one more time. Don't let me down, Edmund. Made me look bad against Meerschaert. Moving on, we have Jose Delgado versus Connor Matthews. Interesting fight here because Delgado, this dude has the it factor, man. Training over at the MMA lab, he has outstanding striking. Flows very well from both stances, got good leg kicks, big power in his hands, really good timing, really, really good eyes. The way that he slides out of the pocket and lands those nasty counter shots, I like everything that I have seen from Delgado thus far, especially on the regional scene, right? Because he comes onto the Contender Series and gets the nasty finish over Ernie Juarez. That was really where everyone got to see about Delgado, but where I was, watching him was over in LFA. I mean, this guy, he's got devastating speed and power in his hands, and I think that's the difference in this fight. I'm going Jose Delgado by finish, and I think he gets it done in the first round. I mean, this guy, you can't stand in front of him. He is incredibly dangerous, and while I think Connor Matthews, fighting out of the New England cartel with Calvin Kattar, Rob Font, those guys over there, they've been on a little bit of a skid overall, right? And I think that Connor Matthews, he's got a good skill set. He's pretty well-rounded, right? He's not particularly great in one area. He does present the grappling, but I don't know that it's good enough to trouble Delgado. Maybe he utilizes it to kind of stall the fight a little bit, wear on Delgado, take some of that explosiveness away, look to mix in some shots and kind of pepper him. But I don't know that he's able to do that. I just think Delgado is that dangerous on the feet, and what we've seen from Matthews, goes out there, loses to Dennis Bazookia. I don't think Dennis is that good, so he gets finished by him, goes out there on the Contender Series, wins on decision, and I don't like what I've seen from Matthews. I love what I have seen from Delgado. He's dangerous. He's got crazy power in his hands. This just feels like they're kind of feeding somebody to Delgado in this matchup. I got Delgado by first round finish. I think he gets a highlight real KO on this card. Moving on. We have Ismail Bonfim, the other Bonfim, versus Nazim Sadykhov. This might be on the entire card the best fight. This fight is absolutely spectacular. Both of these guys are incredibly, incredibly dangerous. I mean, what we've seen from Ismail Bonfim, he's got some serious power. Goes out there, he, wins a decision over Vince Pichel. Pichel's one of those guys that, look, he's a lot older now, but he's a gamer. He's one of those just OGs. He's got the OG Cub Swanson type of style when it comes to fighting. His hands are down. He just kind of wants to sling with you. And we saw Bonfim has, him and his brother, both have gotten a lot more technical on the feet. They're really kind of blending everything well together. So he's very dangerous, right? But he went out there and he did get submitted by Benoit Saint-Denis, right? But again, Saint-Denis is a pretty good fighter. I know he lost to Poirier and Moicano. He's still a good fighter. So that's pretty good competition. Goes out there, and this is really kind of what put him on the map, was that devastating flying knee finish over Terrence McKinney. That was absolutely spectacular. And then on the Contender Series, getting the decision win. So when you watch Ismail Bonfim, he's very dangerous, very explosive, very similar to his brother, does have the submissions in his back pocket, does have the grappling. But I believe that Nazim Sadykhov is going to get this done. And I think that I could see this fight going either way. To me, this is a 50-50 pick'em. I know it's a near even. They have Bonfim as a slight favorite here. I just believe in Sadykhov. From what we have seen from him, I know he went out there and we had the close fight here. I think it was a draw with Vyacheslav Borshov. And listen, Vyacheslav Borshov's a damn good striker. I know that he's kind of been hot and cold in the UFC, coming off of some losses, but he's got really, really good kickboxing. And we saw that Nazim could go in there and strike with him. We saw him go out there and finish Terrence McKinney with a submission. So both guys, getting finishes over Terrence McKinney. Goes out there, gets the violent finish over Evan Elder. Then goes out there on the Contender Series and gets the nasty finish that launched him right into the UFC. So for me, I think this is an absolute banger. I think that this is fireworks. I could see both guys hurting each other. I don't think we see the judges' scorecards in this. Bonfim is explosive. He's got an array of, diverse attacks he throws, flying knees. He's got big shots, in the hands. He's explosive. But I think Nazim, he looks very kind of lethargic, kind of just holds his hands up. And when he throws his combinations, he just looks slow. But when these things land, they are putting people out. I'm going to go Nazim Sadykhov by second round knockout. I believe that Bonfim starts fast, gets in his face, tries to, pick and poke from the outside, try to work his way into that boxing range, maybe let a knee go. But Nazim is durable. He does have decent grappling to where I don't know that Bonfim is just able to, control him too much with the grappling. Maybe he is. I don't think so, though. But I think Nazim's power, he's dangerous, he's confident. I like Nazim in this fight. He has severe power in his hands, man. If you get hit by this guy clean, he will absolutely put you out. I think Nazim is able to pull this one off and get the finish. But either way, I think someone gets finished. This is a damn good fight. I could see it going either way. I'm riding with Nazim Sadykhov in this matchup, though. Moving on to the co-main event of the evening, we have Calvin Kattar versus Youssef Zalal. Where does the time go, man? Where does the time go? I remember Calvin Kattar back in the day when he was beating up on Jeremy Stephens. He's going out there, we're seeing the good, high guard, the boxing. I mean, Calvin Kattar and Rob Font essentially have the same fighting style, right? So Calvin Kattar, to me, looks like a 145-pound version of Rob Font. Throws almost no kicks, relies all on the boxing, has decent takedown defense. But Calvin Kattar, man, 36 years of age, almost 37, and this is hard for me, man, because I am a big Calvin Kattar fan. I have always loved watching Calvin Kattar fight. You will not find a meaner, tougher son of a gun in MMA than Calvin Kattar. This dude has taken some serious punishment. He is impossible basically to put away. He has a never quit, never die attitude. He is dangerous with the boxing. He's got nasty elbows and he is vicious. I mean, when he dropped Jeremy Stephens and followed him to the ground with the vicious ground and pound, this is a mean dude. This is an intense guy in Calvin Kattar. But from what we've seen recently, right, this is almost like the telltale sign that it could be coming to an end, right? And I would love to see Calvin Kattar go out here and do well, but I'm just scared, man. He goes out there and he loses to Aljamain Sterling. I don't fault him too much. Aljamain Sterling, one of the best bantamweights of all time, very high-level grappling. He just got dominated by Aljo. Right now, it's UFC 300. Calvin had a long layoff. I don't fault him too much for that, right? So he goes out there, gets dominated there, goes out against Arnold Allen. It wasn't really a fight. Goes out there, gets injured, so the fight, gets stopped. So that one, not really exactly a loss per se. Goes out there and loses a split decision to Josh Emmett. I could have seen how this fight could have went to Calvin Kattar, right? So again, very close fight with Josh Emmett. So here we have a loss to Aljamain Sterling where he got dominated, who again, lighter guy coming up a weight class. We normally see a little bit of a skill difference. Then, goes out there against Arnold Allen. Very, very good competition. Back-to-back fights. Had the injury. Then goes out against Josh Emmett. Very close fight. Goes out there and absolutely beats up on Giga Chikadze and shows people, listen, man, I'm going nowhere. But before that, he got dominated by Max Holloway and what was one of the best performances we've ever seen, and definitely one of the best Holloway performances. So Calvin Kattar, man, like if you were asking me a couple years ago, I think that he could win this fight. But given the layoffs, the injuries, the damage that he's taken, I don't know that he beats Youssef Zalal. I think Youssef Zalal is one of those guys that, he was out of the UFC, finds his way back in, and he is one of those guys that is firing on all cylinders. He's 28 years of age. He hasn't been towards the top yet. He had that very close fight with Ilia Topuria, or I should say close, but the good back and forth with Ilia Topuria and Ilia's debut. I know it was short notice for Ilia, but still, he went toe-to-toe with Topuria, goes out there, gets a finish on the local scene, before getting back into the UFC, just going out there, rattling off some finishes, comes back in his first fight back in the UFC, gets a sub over Billy Q. I was beyond impressed because Billy Quarantillo, I know he got, KO'd by Cub Swanson. He's durable, he's tough, he pushes the pace, he's got solid grappling. Very impressive win by Youssef Zalal. Goes out there, gets the submission over Jarno Aarons, very impressive, and then goes out there and submits Jack Shore with an arm triangle. So what we've seen from Youssef Zalal, his striking is pretty good. He's got good lateral movement, can switch stances, he's got very good footwork, he's hard to pin down, and he does have decent striking. Right now, is he going to be the better striker in this matchup? In terms of the overall skill set, he does more than Calvin, but I think the boxing of Kattar might be an issue for Zalal because Calvin Kattar has some really, really good boxing, man. It's crispy. He's got a good long jab. He's got a perfect straight right hand that follows behind it. He's got a nasty rear uppercut. So I don't believe that Youssef will be better on the feet. However, I think he's quicker. I think he will mix in the grappling. He will utilize the takedowns. And if he is able to find Calvin Kattar in a bad position, I think he could possibly find a submission. But given what we have seen from Calvin Kattar, he's a hard guy to put away, man. So I'm not going to bank on that, but I think Youssef Zalal goes out there and wins a decision against Calvin Kattar. I think he kind of picks and pokes with some of the kicks, some of the different shots on the feet, because again, he is a lot more diverse in terms of the skill set on the feet to where Calvin is basically just a boxer. But, Youssef's got to be careful because Kattar still has pop in his hands. He still has good speed with the boxing. But I think the versatility, the way that he will mix in the grappling is going to be too much in this fight. I have Youssef Zalal by decision. I like everything that I've seen from Youssef since he's been back in the UFC. Moving on to the main event of the evening between Jared Cannonier and Gregory RoboCop Rodrigues. I went back and forth on this because I'm not sold on Gregory Rodrigues, man. I'm just not. I never have been. A lot of you that have been following my channel maybe have picked up that vibe from me. He's dangerous. No question about it. He's got very, very good grappling, very good submissions. He's got big power in his hands. He's got a good camp behind him. The problem with Gregory is he doesn't have good defense. He doesn't have good defense at all. And, this guy looks like he's 50. He looks like he's 50. Like, he looks like the dude who's 40. Jared looks like the guy who's 32. But, listen, Gregory's dangerous. He's got big power in his hands. He's got good front kicks up the middle. And he has no problem going after somebody and turning it into a slugfest. Now, I can promise you this. If you run at Jared Cannonier with zero defense, you are getting knocked the fuck out. So if Gregory Rodrigues comes into this fight and thinks that he's a glory kickboxer and is just going to pick apart Jared Cannonier, I just don't see that happening. For one, if it did, I'd be shocked. Unless the first shot he throws starches him, that absolutely could happen because RoboCop has, that kind of power. But if he just stands in front of Jared for 5 rounds, because again, this is 5 rounds, I don't think Gregory wins. I don't think he wins. Because Jared Cannonier, I know he's coming off of 2 losses. He lost to Caio Borralho. Is Gregory Rodrigues better than Borralho with the grappling maybe, but with the striking? Absolutely not. Caio is way more precise. So again, you take this matchup with a grain of salt. Goes out there and gets finished by Nassourdine Imavov. the controversial stoppage. That was a very competitive fight. Nasruddin landed a good shot. I think it could have played out a little bit longer. Thought the stoppage was a little bit premature. But again, he was right there neck and neck with Nasruddin Imavov, who's the #1 guy in the weight class. And then before that, beat the dog shit out of Marvin Vettori. And then he goes out there and beats Sean Strickland, where I know people were saying they thought Strickland won. I thought this was a close fight. I could have absolutely have seen how, I thought Jared won this, but I have to go back and check it out. But I thought Jared won this fight, and then he lost to Izzy Adesanya. The competition, strength of schedule is on the side of Cannonier. The striking, I still give the edge to Jared Cannonier. What concerns me? He got finished by Imavov. He got hit with a nasty shot. He got battered around by Caio Borralho, and now he's 40 years of age. We're seeing the signs that he's starting to slow down. But if Gregory comes into this fight and he does not get an early finish and he just wants to stand in front of Jared Cannonier, I think Jared gets back in the win column. I think he finishes Gregory Rodrigues. However, I don't believe that Gregory's going to do that. I think that what we saw in his most recent outing, he went out there against Christian Leroy Duncan, who, by the way, Leroy Duncan, he's got some slick striking. He's a hard puzzle to deal with on the feet, and we saw Gregory show some fight IQ for once in MMA and move forward, utilized his high-level grappling, and was able to control the fight and win a decision. I thought this was honestly one of the more impressive wins that we've seen from RoboCop. The way he mixed things together, he utilized his power with the striking, then level changed, took him down, controlled him. I like what we have seen from Gregory Rodrigues. Something to also keep in mind that I remember, Rodrigues gets busted open. He gets cut open. He bleeds a lot. So hopefully we don't, see some sort of stoppage because he's leaking like crazy, right? Because that's definitely something that could happen. Goes out there and starches Brad Tavares. Brad Tavares is a guy that's known for his durability and not being finished. Well, that clearly shows what kind of power Gregory has to go out there and finish Brad Tavares. Goes out there and gets a finish over Dennis Tululin. But again, this scares me. He gets KO'd by Bruno Ferreira. I see some similarities in the style between Bruno and Cannonier, right? And I think Jared Cannonier, he's very defensively responsible. He switches stances. He attacks, all three levels, leg, body, head. I'm back and forth in case you can't tell, man. I'm back and forth in case you can't tell. But, I feel like when we see these kinds of fight night headliners, they go one of two ways. We either see the old dog teach the new dog on the block, some lessons, right? Or we see the new guy show the old dog it's time to step aside and it's time for the new dog to take over. I think we see that. I am going to go Gregory Rodrigues, but again, I don't think I'm that confident, man. I'm just being honest. I don't think it's that confident, or I'm that confident, but I am going to go by finish. And I'm going to say it happens in the second round. Listen, the longer this fight plays out, I believe it favors Jared Cannonier. While he's older, Jared has always had pretty good cardio. I know he's a little bit older. He's a very well-rounded fighter. He's got good striking. I think he's the better striker out of the two. But in terms of the power and just the big reckless abandonment that Gregory fights with, I think that can give Jared some issues. But again, I absolutely see how Jared could sleep RoboCop in this fight. To me, this is a very, very close fight. I think this is a really close fight because, again, everyone's so quick to jump on the new train with Gregory, coming up. Cannonier's old. He doesn't have it anymore. And I know he's 40, and that's kind of the narratives. Don't sleep on Jared in this fight, man. I absolutely could see Jared starching Gregory Rodrigues if Gregory comes in and does not fight intelligently. So I'm banking on a intelligent RoboCop who will mix things together, utilize the grappling. Think he finds a big shot on Jared Cannonier at some point, takes him down, lands some good shots, and is able to land some good ground and pound. I have Gregory Rodrigues by finish. Maybe it's a TKO, maybe it's a submission. I'm going to say by TKO via ground and pound, rocks him on the feet. I got RoboCop getting this one done. Like I said, would not be surprised if the old dog and Jared Cannonier stops the new guy on the rise, though. But if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, comment your thoughts down below. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you do not miss an upload. I would appreciate it. See you next time.